Real World Stories, Leader Talk and Q&A with Aaron Harper, and it's led by Dr. John Hayes. So if any of you in the audience are unfamiliar with Dr. John Hayes, he's an internationally recognized speaker, a business coach, an Amazon bestseller. He helps franchisors and franchisees reduce costs and increase profit with 40 plus years of experience as in franchising. Some of you guys might be familiar with the brand Homevestors or We Buy Ugly Houses. And more importantly than that, Dr. Hayes is educating the next franchise generation, which I'm proud to be a part of. And he is my professor from the Titus Center of Franchising and leads the advisory board there. So with that said, take it away, Professor, and I will be your chairman.
Well, thank you, Matthew. And hello, everyone. I see lots of familiar faces. I like seeing a lot of our advisory board members. And it always, it's almost overwhelming to have students in an audience or graduates in the case of the two who are on here. It's always, it jolts me for a second to realize I helped that young person or those young people get into franchising. I hope that's a good thing. I think it is. It certainly has been for me. So there's Aaron. Hello, Aaron.
Hi.
We're going to do a little bit of a founder story with Aaron Harper. So, Aaron, nobody, when you're a kid, unless your father is a founder of a franchise company or something similar, nobody says, when I grow up, I'm going to be a franchisor. Most people in America have no clue what that means. Most people in America have no clue what franchising means, which is why it's so important to be educating young people about franchising and helping them into the 350 some industries that make up franchising. So nobody ever says that. And I'm assuming, Aaron, you didn't say that. What'd you want to be when you were growing up?
When I graduated college, I wanted to be a talent agent in Hollywood.
You would have been a good talent agent. I can see that.
Thank you.
You've got that, the combination on the disc scale of the D and the I, the driver and the influencer, which I think most founders have that combination anyway. And the ones that I've worked with through the years have definitely been high D's, but oftentimes high I's, even more prominently than the D. So at some point, Aaron, like each of us, this is probably true of each person on here, somebody introduced you to franchising, you discovered franchising. In my case, a guy called me to ask me to write a book for him. And I said, well, what do you do? And he said, I'm in franchising. I had no idea what that was. He said he was a franchisor. I quickly grabbed the dictionary. This was 1979, sitting in my office at Temple University. Franchisor wasn't in the dictionary, or I clearly didn't know how to spell it at the time. And that opened the door to a career that at 29 at that point, I had no idea I would end up in franchising and devote my life to it, and now devote my life to educating young people about franchising. So when did it happen for you, Aaron? When did you realize there was a thing called franchising?
So I was looking for a career change, and I reached out to a buddy of mine from college. I grew up in Southern California and went to college at UC Santa Barbara. And a buddy of mine worked at a carpet cleaning franchise, and he's like, you should get into franchise development. And I was like, what's that? You mean like McDonald's? Because that's what I thought it was.
How old?
So this was 2017. So I'm 36 now. So I was 30. Yeah. Is that math right?
Wow.
Is that math?
Just 6 years ago until you
29.
Yeah, great. And when you heard, you should get into franchise development, were you already in sales
Yeah.
From college to 30, what were you doing?
So from college to 30, uh, so I graduated college, moved to Hollywood, um, worked in at a talent agency, and was on the track to kind of become an agent. Worked on Will Smith's team, worked on Jesse Eisenberg's team, worked on Melissa Leo's team. And Melissa Leo had just won an Academy Award for The Fighter. And so I joke, like, every story that you've heard about Hollywood is 100% true. Like if anyone's seen Entourage, um, my life was Lloyd's life, like working for Ari Gold.
Yeah.
So did that, started partying, um, lost everything, and decided I was going to get sober, moved into working in B2B sales at AT&T. I am a recovering AT&T employee. And so then a buddy of mine was like, hey, you should get into franchise development, and loved the idea of being able to help business owners become entrepreneurs, or people become business owners, and emailed his boss every 3 weeks till he hired me seven different times, and been in franchising since then. Have seen everything, I feel like, or seen a lot. I've seen the dark side of franchising, I've seen the light side of franchising, and decided, after a few years, that I wanted to do it on my own, and I wanted to do it differently than I had seen in the past, and acquired the franchise rights to a 34-year-old power washing business in
So when
January
you
2023.
backing up 6 years ago, uh, you were in the talent seeking business. And isn't it ironic when I see people like Steve Lieber and Dan Monahan and others on here who are in franchise development or have been or touch on that topic at least? Um, what are they doing? They're looking for talent. They're
Correct.
looking
Yeah.
for the right talent to join that brand. And so you already had some good education that would help you in franchise development. And what the was it? Did you join franchise development in a carpet cleaning franchise?
Yep. Yep. Working for ChemDry.
Okay, all right, great. That's right. So you did you equate it at all to okay, this is a matter of finding the right person, like, and it's got to be a person who has certain skills and uh, wants to follow a system. That's a skill that people don't think about very often or in the right way, because we have a lot of franchisees who don't have that skill, and this results in tragic ends to many careers.
Yes and no. The ability to help people become business owners was a lot less um, arduous than kind of dealing with really intense personalities in Hollywood. Um, so it was like calm in comparison. Um, in retrospect, dealing with franchisees is almost similar to dealing with really big actors. Like, they're just, uh, insatiable at times, right? We've all been in franchising long enough. Um, but the uh, I was on kind of the tail end of a private equity turn, and so the need to sell units was less important than who you were selling them to, if that makes sense. And I didn't
Let's
know
talk,
that at
let's,
the
and
time.
let's talk about that for a minute since you bring it up. And a lot of this goes on. You didn't have a lot of pressure on you to just sell a franchise.
I had a
You
lot of pressure.
okay to just
Yeah,
sell a
yeah. So the
franchise?
need
And
to
I thought you said that you could be more judicious about who you sold to.
No. Let me say it again in a different way.
All
The
right.
need to sell the
Uh,
amount of units necessary was more important than who we were selling the units
okay.
to.
All right.
So
And did
we
that,
had a lot of failures. We had a lot of kind of a lack of support infrastructure that um, was disheartening, and I candidly almost left franchising.
did it, how much did it, in Hollywood, the talent business, I don't know anything about it, but you've got to do a lot of schmoozing and you've got to know a lot of people. You got to do a lot of networking. You got to do a lot of
Yep,
talking. You got to be persuasive, all those things that a
yep,
high eye like you is good at doing. And maybe it bothered you in Hollywood, being a talent agent, some of the
yep,
sacrifices you had to make. Did it bother you in franchise development?
yeah.
You said you almost left. I mean, what was upsetting about your situation?
So I would sell units or award territories, and I would promise the franchisees that they would receive a certain level of support, and I had zero control over whether or not that support was going to be delivered upon. And it's been a large reason why I decided to become a franchisor, is because if I can sign people up, make the promises they're going to get the support, and then actually manage and lead the team that's supporting them, then operations and sales are 100% aligned. One of the biggest challenges I see in franchising is operations says one thing and sales says another. And then as the business grows, the operations teams learns things about the right franchisees to bring in and what's working and what's not. And then sales continues to sell units. And so if they go in different directions, what happens is that you have mismatched expectations, excuse me, amongst the franchisees who sign up. So, anyways, I would sign people up, and then they wouldn't receive the support that I promised that they'd get.
And I realized that was new to you, but now that you've been in franchising, even though you've only been in 6 years, that's not really very long. Um, I don't know that there's ever been a brand where the operations people said, wow, our franchise development people do a great job. They always bring us the right skill set in a franchisee. And historically, that's not the case. But you wouldn't have
Correct.
had that perspective. Was it easy? Was the job easy? Could you sell franchises easily?
So I could, yeah. I mean, I would say franchise sales is probably one of the hardest sells in that I've ever seen, because you have to sell someone the ability for them to take a big leap and chance on themselves, and then they pay a considerable amount of money up front, and then they're beholden to a royalty. And so I don't think it's an easy sell for most, which is why I think a lot of franchisors are limited in terms of the options and where they can find franchisees. And so they rely heavily on outsourced sales organizations and broker networks and stuff like that, because they don't have another option. They're in a very low leverage position. For me, it was easy, but what I learned when we went into Patch Boys, because that was the brand that I went into in between rolling Suds and ChemDry, is basically it was me and a brand president, and we're the first two employees with a 100-unit franchise system when it was acquired by the company I worked for. And we effectively had to do like a turnaround of the brand. And so him and I would talk like 4, 5, 6 times a day, and we were in lockstep with one another. And there were some challenges, because we learned that a franchisee isn't going to be successful, and here's why. And then I'd have to tweak my sales system, and he'd have to tweak his ops system. But we had this immense amount of trust for one another, and we were kind of in the trenches together. So my suggestion is, it says one of the things that I've done internally at Rolling Suds is that operations and sales have to talk to each other, trust each other, respect each other, and talk regularly.
So, in
And if they
spite of
don't,
that not in spite of that not happening when you first got started 6 years ago, what was it about franchise development that was easy for you? But it's not easy for many. I don't know if most, but many franchisors, particularly getting started, and for franchise development. Why was it easy for you? What was different about you?
Um, I don't know what was different about me other than than other people who can award territories and sell units. I mean, I have an innate ability to influence people and help them make decisions that they find is their decision versus versus like trying to sell. And I worry that like when a franchise is being sold to someone, they're being sold on a belief that they're going to receive something that they might not end up getting. Whereas like the way I've always done franchise sales is it's their decision. They have to come to the decision on their own. And while I'm there as a guide, it's not a heavy sales tactic pressure type situation. I fear that if we kind of continue down this like sales tactic pressure type situation with a lot of the franchise development that I've seen, we'll run the risk of more unhappy franchisees. It has to be their decision to start a business, and and if it's not, and they feel like they've got to buy this thing at a certain amount of time, otherwise it's going to get taken by someone else, or one of these other scare tactics that I've seen, um, they're the wrong expectations are going to be set. Um, so
How often do you think that's happening across the board? If there are, and no one knows how many franchisors are actually actively selling franchises, Fran Data, IFA will say somewhere in the range of 3,000 are actively doing so, and there are more franchises. There's a new franchise brand popping up every day, but there must be a new franchise brand dying every day because it's been years since we've got beyond 3,500 or so franchise companies.
to be exact, it's 600 the last 2 years open, file an FDD for the first time,
Yeah,
and 600 decide not to file the last
yeah,
2 years.
yeah. Okay. But let's say there are 3,000 actively selling franchises. You ever think about, and I know you don't know all 3,000 or, even 2,000 necessarily,
Right.
but you're out there with a lot of people. Yeah, you're in a lot of networks, and you've been around, even though only 6, 7 years. You're a celebrity almost within franchising because of your responsible franchising gig recently with IFA. How much irresponsible franchise development do you think is going on?
Um, People are going to disagree with me, but I think the majority of the franchises that are being sold within the franchise sales organization community are being sold irresponsibly.
Yeah, I'm afraid you might be right. We have no proof of it, and we could certainly discuss that. But I think it's a
And real
larger.
quick, let me clarify specifically. So I operate within the broker networks. I've
Yeah,
done all of the deals, almost all the deals that I've done with Rolling Suds, and we've done 187 of them in a year and a half, are done with brokers that I trust. I think are ethical, wonderful people. They know my kids' names. We've vacationed together, um, and uh, and the reason I know that franchises are being sold irresponsibly is they call me a year after they signed someone up, and they told that person because the brand or the FSO or whatever told them that they could sell the units as absentee. They're getting calls from these franchisees saying that they bought 5 territories, they never left their job, they were never willing to leave their job, and they lost everything. And now they're trying to sell their territories, but they have no ability to sell it because the business has no value. Um, and so I believe that franchises are being sold irresponsibly. And I also feel like the cause of it, one of the biggest causes of it, is the FSO points the finger at the brokers, the franchisor points the finger at the FSO, and no one's really taking accountability. But the fact of the matter is, everyone's misrepresenting the opportunity. So someone has to take ownership of
yeah.
the issue.
Okay. So I want to keep moving on in the progression of Aaron Harper. And by the way, we're going to do in November at our advisory board meeting, absentee ownership will be the topic that we drill down on, just as we did responsible franchising with you, Aaron, last April at our meeting. So you went carpet cleaning, patch boys. What happened?
I got the job offer of my lifetime to make $1 million and franchise a business from scratch and start from scratch and get a guaranteed amount of commission and an increase in pay and a salary bump with the word president in it. And like the crazy entrepreneur I am, I said no, thank you. I can do this on my own. I'm going to go find a business.
Why did you say no, thank you? I don't know how many people would have said, yeah, it's what I've been waiting for. Let me do it.
I think it's partially because I'm insane. And then also like it's purpose driven for me. Like if I'm going to tell someone that they're going to get a thing and they're going to invest their life savings in it, and I don't have 100% control over the team that's providing them the thing that I promised them, then really what am I doing? And what's the point of it, right? If the point is to help people become business owners, and give them the opportunity to change their lives and have a positive impact, and I don't have the control in helping people get there. And the only way I was going to do that is if I owned the company. Majority ownership, could make decisions as I see fit, could hire people before I thought they needed to be hired, could pre-invest in the business, could raise capital at any point that I need to, could choose the partners that I partner with. And that to me was then in 2022 a non-negotiable, and forever it will remain a non-negotiable. And based on everything I've seen, that's the only way that I can actually accomplish the goals that I have.
And that was about when you got this big offer, President $1 million. Were you about 5 years into your franchise career?
Yes.
Okay. And so you knew that wasn't the right path, even though maybe it would have been an easy path to $1 million, but it was a matter of your conscience and your desire, which the I personality has a desire to help people, truly help and influence people. So that surely comes out of you. So go ahead. Then you decided, no, I'm not going to take that route. I'm going to take another route.
So I decided I was going to look for a business to franchise from scratch. So not an existing business that has been franchised, not one that already had franchisees that I'd have to fix the situation, one that I could start from scratch, partner with the right people. So I raised capital from David Barr and Brad Fishman, who have been mentors of mine, and could provide a long-term mentorship, as I was referred to as intellectual capital, help me dodge bullets, potentially figure out who to hire. They've done this before. Met a 34-year-old power washing company out of Philadelphia, and a family business called Rolling Suds. And they had built a $2+ million power washing business. And I met them. They were interviewing other franchisors who they didn't feel confident that those franchisors would honor their family name in the way that we've been able to. And so we partnered. I met them in September of 2022, acquired the franchise rights in January of last year, and built a franchise system, raised a significant amount of capital, and we've turned away about a little over $10 million in revenue from franchise startup costs. So about 59 franchisees wanted to write us a $200,000 check, and we said no. And we've signed up now 51 franchisees who have purchased 187 territories, and every single one of those franchisees will be open by September.
Okay. And going back a little bit again, the 51 franchisees have come from your broker network who you referred to as people who you know. They know your kids' names and you vacation with them. There are a lot of brokers out there, and don't they all want to get on the bandwagon for rolling Suds? And how have you managed to hold this to, and I don't know, are you talking about 6 brokers, or you're talking about 16 brokers who are doing the work for
No,
you?
I do most of my work predominantly with one network. As you know, Alicia Visconti and I are very close. Um,
4 minutes,
I've
gentlemen.
Thank you.
So I make it very clear to the consultants when I start working with them who my candidate and my buyer is and who it isn't. And I also make it very clear to them on how to present it to that candidate. So here are the bullet points. Here's how I present it. And also, here's what happens if you bring me someone who isn't that person. And so as I go into the relationship with that consultant, they have very clear expectations set of like, this is you can send me that person, but I'm going to give them back to you. And here's why. But there's a whole element of broker management that needs to be done before you actually start presenting your brand. Because otherwise, you're just going to have a bunch of brokers who throw spaghetti at the wall, and then you're going to waste a ton of time talking to the wrong people.
So you spend a lot of time. I met you, I think, at the FranServe convention. Lisa is a member of our advisory board and provides a mini internship to one of our students coming up in July. One of my students will be there among all those brokers and franchisors again. So it's a wonderful opportunity. You spend what percentage of your time discussing the world of franchising by Aaron Harper with brokers?
So before I started selling Patch Boys, I spent about 7 months developing relationships with brokers, trusting. It was the middle of COVID, so we didn't have broker community like network, like we didn't have events. So it was cold calling brokers and making sure they understood who I was, most importantly, and also that I wanted to understand who they were as people. Um, they're not just lead sources, they're people. They have wants and desires and values, and they like certain brands and they dislike certain brands. And I think the challenge that some franchisors get into is he just thinks they just think they're lead sources and they're going to pay 30 grand or whatever and get leads. And that's not the case. I have the lowest membership app possible, but I have the deepest relationships. And so I don't need to pay the extra amount of money because it's a waste of money due to the relationships that I have. And so anyone who's trying to sell units or find franchisees needs to establish very meaningful relationships with the consultants or the brokers that they work with.
I think that's so important what you just said. And again, it takes a high eye to realize that this is the way to go in franchising. You emphasize building relationships. You have not emphasized how much money you have to pay to be part of the network. Matthew, I know we're up against the clock. So Aaron, it's a great story, and I'd like to continue it in some way, some other time, probably. Matthew?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This has been great.